Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the injured Gazans coming to Egypt via the Rafah border crossing. We're going to be looking at the medical attention they are receiving and also the humanitarian, medical and relief aid that is going through the Rafah border crossing to the other side into Gaza. But before we start doing that, let's check out some of the main stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who received Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa in Cairo on Tuesday. Presidential spokesperson said the two leaders applauded continued bilateral cooperation. They expressed keenness to back mechanisms to expand ties in all fields. President Sisi and Mnangagwa stressed on the significance to develop cooperation in the fields of agriculture, agricultural industrialization, fish and cattle industries. Mnangagwa said his country was looking forward to benefiting from the Egyptian expertise in various domains. They also probed means of boosting joint African action in light of the hosting of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 in Cairo. And we're joined now over the phone by Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, to shed more light on the meeting between the Zimbabwean and the Egyptian presidents. Ambassador Bayoumi, can you hear me, sir? Good evening.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Mr. Ambassador, now the visit by the Zimbabwean President Mnangagwa to Egypt meeting President Sisi at Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace. They're talking about economic cooperation, mainly agriculture, agricultural industrialization, fish and cattle. Now, is this an independent sort of visit, or does it have some sort of a connection to the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2023 that Egypt is hosting? And what are we really looking forward in terms of cooperating with Zimbabwe?
Let me start by reminding ourselves that Zimbabwe is the old Rhodesia, which was fighting like South Africa against the apartheid, and it won its independence during the 60s with the help of Egypt, with the help of Gamal Abdel Nasser, and that time of the African Revolution. And now we have one more friend, very dear friend to us, because we followed its recent history. And of course, a visit like that, it will cover all what you said, either the bilateral relations, which is should be taking care more and more, or the relation within the African Union, or the relation with the United Nations, because Africa helped us a lot lately by voting for the favor of the Palestine question. 120 vote positive for us. The African Union consider Palestine as a member state in the African Union, although Palestine is not African. All these things are there on the table, and now we added the last exhibition, the fair of trade cooperation, and really I am one of those who are deep believe that we have a lot to do to make more and more profits and more trade and investment in Africa. And we need investment more than trade, because the trade is occupied by the foreign countries of Europe or else. And we need to establish very small and medium-sized projects to make use of the possibility of agriculture. We need in Egypt and the Arab world much more agriculture to fill the food gap. We have a food gap of $50 billion. We need to fill it from anywhere, especially from Africa, friendly countries. And I have, in my small experience, some experiences like that, where there are many countries in Africa who have plenty of space if you want to cultivate your cereals or your wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Here, investment, also investment in a small industry. Many quantities of vegetables and fruits in Africa, they just throw it away because they don't have the way to keep it or to industrialize it. So once I tried to show our African friends how the canned food industry is developed in Egypt, and the Prime Minister of Cameroon phoned me. He said, "I'm thanking you for the present you sent to me, but I thank you more to tell me that Egypt has this experience. Come and teach us how to establish those small industries in order to benefit from it." And another thing I tried, the forestries in Africa. Our Minister of Industry asked me to make a barter deal to export railways to Africa and to import wood from Africa.
Your Excellency,
when I talked to the Minister of Forestry, he said, "Yes, I can buy your railways, but I cannot sell you wood because wood is dominated by European companies. So you have to come and to cut the wood you want yourself." It is a very small project, but it gains a lot.
Your Excellency, the Intra-Africa Trade Fair should be ending by tomorrow. Do you think more deals will be ironed out by tomorrow? Or most of the deals have to do with agriculture and really narrowing the food gap? Or also we're talking about transportation and infrastructure, as you mentioned?
With everything, because also you have obstacles you have to deal with it. And we have to make the situation much better. Transport in Africa is not that good. Ports are not that good. The banking system needs to be better than that according to the international level. Many things must be done. Mm-hmm. Even in health, in education, in all the fields of cooperation, we have many things to be done and to exchange. But my point, don't concentrate on trade only, because trade needs investment at the beginning in all these fields.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And also today, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Minister of Supply and Internal Trade Ali Msalhi. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said President el-Sisi reviewed intense effort exerted by the government to provide people with the needed basic commodities and make sure such supplies are not affected by the global crises. The meeting also discussed efforts of moving forward with the national project to establish strategic stores and warehouses and to complete the national silo project. The project aims to secure sufficient stocks of basic commodities and food products throughout the year. This highlights the state's keenness to secure the needs of citizens and achieve stability for the Egyptian food security situation. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said today Israeli violations of the rights of Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip, notably with women and children, amount to outright war crimes. Meeting the UN Under-Secretary, the Executive Director of the UN Agency for Women, Sima Bahous, the top diplomat renewed the call for an immediate ceasefire in the Israeli war and a sufficient, safe, durable flow of aid and relief staff into the Palestinian enclave. Shoukry stressed that the international community should shoulder its responsibilities to end the Israeli policy of collective punishment of the Gaza population. Meanwhile, the UN Women Executive said more than 55,000 pregnant women in Gaza are in danger amid the continuous Israeli bombardment and siege of hospitals that render them out of service. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry also condemned calls by the Israeli Minister of Migration of Palestinians outside the Gaza Strip. Minister Shukri described the calls as irresponsible and totally rejected, adding that the remarks show that Israeli government's policies are contradictory to international law. The top diplomat said any talks about a voluntary displacement of Palestinians are disgusting, asserting that displacement is the result of military attacks and deliberate besiege of civilians in the Strip. Earlier, the Israeli Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said he welcomes the initiative of the voluntary immigration of the Gazan Arabs to countries around the world. And Egypt said today the Rafah border crossing is open and has not closed at any time since the start of the Gaza crisis. In its statement, the Foreign Ministry confirmed that the Israeli side is responsible for blocking aid deliveries through the crossing as a result of extreme measures. According to the statement, those skeptical about the opening of the Rafah crossing can go back to data provided by the UN and international aid officials who visited Rafah, which show that Egypt had implemented all measures to guarantee allowing aid into Gaza. The statement expressed rejections to false allegations over Egypt's support of the Palestinian cause. Meanwhile, aid deliveries continued at the Rafah border crossing, readying to pass to Gaza. Nearly 161 trucks carrying food and medical aid and livelihood materials arrived at the crossing. The border crossing has witnessed the exit of 600 Egyptians and foreigners into Egypt. These were the main stories making the news today, but now let's check out this report regarding Egypt really offering a lot of urgent medical care for the injured Gazans coming from the Gaza Strip into Egypt. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
The Minister of Health and Population, Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, asserted that his ministry is exerting its utmost efforts to help Palestinians affected by the ruthless Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip through offering urgent medical care to the injured Gazans arriving into Egyptian territory via the Rafah border crossing. During an online session held by the World Health Organization Regional Office for the Eastern Mediterranean to discuss the humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian territories, Minister Abdel Ghaffar further said that in line with directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egyptian hospitals are receiving more and more critically injured and sick Palestinians every day, noting that admitted cases include children with cancer and dialysis patients, as well as those suffering from chronic diseases. Minister Abdel Ghaffar said Egypt receives between 40 to 50 injured Palestinians from Gaza for treatment daily and is willing and ready to receive more. He urged the international community to support the Palestinian state and Palestinians in the war-battered enclave and take more measures to provide urgent humanitarian aid. Meanwhile, the minister held a meeting with the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, to discuss cooperation in providing humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians against the background of the events in the Gaza Strip. They discussed repercussions of the humanitarian crisis and the proposed plans to expand life-saving assistance to the civilian population in Gaza. Both sides agreed on the imperative of providing security for medical teams and ambulance crews to perform their tasks to the fullest. For his part, Tedros Adhanom pointed out the WHO has provided 14 trucks of aid to the people of Gaza in coordination with the Egyptian government, stressing that the organization continues to work with Egypt to increase the delivery of medical supplies, improve humanitarian coordination, and strengthen overcrowded health workers and facilities inside Gaza. Minister Abdel Ghaffar also visited a hospital in North Sinai to check on services provided to the injured Palestinians. He expressed Egypt's solidarity with the Palestinian cause and its commitment to provide emergency and medical services to the wounded. He spoke with the injured, checked on their health conditions, and ensured all their needs were met. Minister also instructed medical staff to provide all the necessary support for the injured till they fully recover. Many cases have undergone delicate surgical operations in various specialities, including surgical and thoracic exploration, fractures, as well as amputations. The ministers ordered the provision of prosthetic limbs for the amputees and immediate performance of required surgeries according to the patient's status. He also said there was continuous coordination with all the concerned authorities to receive the injured and provide them with the best medical care.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and joined by Dr. Islam Anan, the lecturer on health policy and health economics at Ain Shams University. Dr. Anan, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure, as usual, Mr.
Our
Anan.
pleasure,
Thank
sir.
you for the evening.
Dr. Anan, now we've been talking about the aid trucks going from Egypt to Gaza through the Rafah border crossing.
Yes.
Obviously, a lot of talk about these trucks passing through the gates from the Egyptian side of the crossing. However, they are being halted or stopped or having difficulties, taking a long time to actually get into Gaza from the other side. We keep saying medical supplies, medical aid, relief aid. What are the exact, because you went there as well, so tell us more about the specific sort of material, medications. Are they receiving, are we sending incubators? Are we sending vaccines? Are we sending oxygen cylinders? Are we sending general sort of medications for the basic cases, vitamins? What exactly are we sending, or what is being sent in general into Gaza?
That's a very good start to the conversation, because we are discussing a situation which is, from healthcare perspective, is catastrophic. And when we say catastrophic, we're just not putting any certain adjective. It's by definition of the World Health Organization. We don't have healthcare infrastructure at all in Gaza Strip. So if we need medical aid and medical supplies, it means that we need to reform and rebuild the whole healthcare system. So we need all what you mentioned, and the reports are mentioning that we need at least 100 convoys per day or trucks per day to be able to supply the basic essential needs just to maintain life in Gaza Strip. We are talking about milk for children, for infants. We're talking about even clean water. We're talking about batteries and electricity and chargers. We are talking about vaccines, as you mentioned. So we can be heading towards catastrophic viruses outbreak if we are not vaccinating the children there. And unfortunately, if the occupation troops are bombarding Gaza for instant killing, and they are actually as well killing them slowly by depriving them from any basic needs to maintain their living, even from clean water, even from trucks. So you are looking at, for example, we can face polio. So we need vaccination for polio. You need vaccination for hepatitis B, for all the viruses, on all the basic vaccinations. You need as well dialysis units for kidney failure babies and for people who are actually suffering from kidney diseases or kidney failure. We need as well, even for women, pregnant women. There's currently 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza Strip. How they're going to be able to deliver in good sanitation and in good conditions. And if we are talking about medications, as you mentioned, there is a need, of course, for antibiotics. There is lack of antibiotics and essential medical supplies. There is a huge need for anesthetics to be able to perform surgical operations, for surgical tools, for even making a hospital in the field itself, field hospital, to be able to operate for the emergency surgeries. We are talking about civilians being bombarded. We're talking about women and children. They are vulnerable population. They are really in need for instant medical aid, for medical assistance. And of course, if we're talking how to solve it, first of all, we need to stop the bombarding.
Yes.
Of course, any health policy solution, rather than stopping this barbarian bombarding, would be secondary to just stopping the unhumanitarian bombarding of the Gaza Strip.
Well, we will be talking more about the aid deliveries going into the Gaza Strip, but another thing that Egypt is working on is receiving the injured Palestinians.
Yes.
Egypt is receiving about 40 to 50 maybe Palestinian or Gazan patients into the Egyptian hospital, a military makeshift hospital, also El Arish hospital, among other hospitals. Now, is there a certain criteria in terms of how or who exactly to receive? Because there are thousands and thousands of injured Palestinians as a result of the bombardment. So is there a certain criteria, certain cases that Egypt is receiving, and what kind of treatment are they receiving? And if it's a treatment that they will actually fix or treat, do they stay in the hospitals or are they sent back? How does this work?
Yeah, so first of all, we need to talk about the preparedness itself at the Egyptian side. And let's say, to start with, that under President Sisi supervision and Ministry of Health, Professor Dr. Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, Egypt has prepared Rafah Hospital. They prepared as well El Arish International Hospital to receive the medical aid. And if we are talking about the medical aid itself, we are talking that Egypt donated so far collectively, all the sum of the other countries collectively provided to the Gaza Strip. So in terms of preparedness, we're talking about, for example, medical staff. And for example, in Egypt, there's 800 Egyptian physicians who applied for an application to be serving there. So we are having a lot of volunteers. And in terms of preparation of equipments, currently there's a dialysis unit in Rafah hospitals. There's surgical operations, there's medical supplies to be able to perform surgeries and even to supply for chronic medications like hypertension and diabetes. And let's remember that even before the 7th of October, we used to receive some Palestinian patients taking their treatment inside in the Egyptian lands and then returning back. So if we are talking about the triage itself, and by triage it means the selection of the patients, of course it needs to be through a lot of filters and layers. First of all is preventive medicine filtration, which is once they are crossing the borders, we need to make sure that they got their necessary vaccinations, and then after that they don't have any viruses, bacteria, they are free of that, and if so, they will be treated. If not, they will go through the triage. The triage, it means that to check whether they need surgical operations, and if the surgical operation can be provided in Rafah Hospital, it will be in Rafah Hospital. If not, some of them will go to specialized hospitals, like what happened in Mahat Nasser, and they will remain in the hospital till complete recovery or stabilization of the case. And then there's certain policies on the returning back once the situation is actually suitable for the medical conditions as well, for the safe return to their homes, if we are actually talking that they will find homes to return to. And if we are talking again about the medical supplies, and that's what actually Egypt is doing, is to provide these medical supplies and medical aid on the borders itself, and that's actually what's happening as well. So you can provide instant help and instant medical support when you can actually provide it outside of the hospital. It will be a fast one, like what we are talking about, malnutrition for infants. If we're talking about babies in need to fast surgical operations that will not going to be permitted, or it will be delayed if they are going to reach the hospitals. So once you do have it, you do have a medical records for all of them with all conditions, and a daily reports about their medical stabilization and the cure rate and the cure condition day after day. However, well, as you mentioned, we are receiving not all of the injured and all of who need actually hospitalization, but it's upon a selection and a criteria that's being filtered from both sides.
Well, Egypt obviously is the closest neighbor to Gaza, and that's why a lot of the injured Gazans are going to Egypt. But what about other cases that could, I mean, is there a possibility that, pardon, other countries can actually receive Gazan patients if cases permit that patients would be able to sustain traveling time? Are there other countries offering such a help, receiving Gazan patients, or is it just Egypt?
So,
because we're talking about, I mean, that's 2.3 or 2.4 million. We have thousands and hundreds of thousands
displaced
of potential as patients as well.
Yeah, and we are talking more than 1 million displaced so far. However, there are our families still. We consider all the time that Gaza is, there are our families there, and we are capable to receive the patients, treat them, and the healthcare system capacity is well equipped to receive all the patients till their condition is actually stabilized and they can return back. The main thing is just to stop what's happening, so we'll be able to peacefully receive patients and make sure that they are okay and they return back. Of course, there's a lot of medical aid coming from a lot of countries. We are receiving in Arish International Airport every day daily flights containing a lot of medical supplies, a lot of necessary life support for water, food, even milk for infants and milk formulas. However, we need more.
Yes.
All the time we need more. And once we do have the supplies, Egypt is capable of providing all the help and all the supplies to Gaza Strip, and all the Palestinians are in need to help. And this is actually the role Egypt took and currently pioneering in doing it. We are providing the most aid happening in the region. We are providing daily support to the borders. And once the trucks are permitted, up to 100 trucks per day, I guess we can go through this bad phase or catastrophic phase to start the next phase, which is the reform of the system and rebuilding the system there. And I believe this is the essential phase. So if we're talking currently about the phase of receiving patients, I believe we need to finish this quickly if we can cease fire, and trying to build field hospitals inside Gaza and equip hospitals there, especially that we are talking that 70% of the hospitals have been bombarded by the Zionist troops. And even today, another hospital this morning been bombarded again. And rebuilding the hospitals will actually be more proactively strategic solution than sending all the Palestinian and injured Palestinians outside their borders, outside their homes, and outside even Egypt. This will be the plan that the Zionist occupation troops are actually seeking, to displace all of them out of Gaza and then displace them to other countries and then refuse to make them return back. So we are again at this plan. I believe we shouldn't be going along with the plan and trying to rebuild Gaza Strip hospital and healthcare system, which will be better for both Palestinians and all the neighboring countries.
Yes. Well, Egypt has made it very clear that our end from regarding the Rafah border crossing is open since the start of the crisis. Now, aid trucks are finding it difficult going into the Gaza Strip, even though they pass through the Egyptian side of it. Are the injured Palestinians and Gazans as well finding it difficult getting into the getting through to the Egyptian side and being received by the Egyptian hospitals and medical care units?
So if we're talking about the trucks itself and as the...
Individuals, the injured
director,
individuals.
Yes, we'll talk both sides. The entry of the trucks itself, there's of course some difficulties, and the Director General of the WHO mentioned that we cannot secure the safety of the medical convoys entering Gaza Strip because again, the troops, occupation troops are even bombarding ambulances and the medical aid and even doctors. So we have a lot of casualties among healthcare professionals from UN, from Palestine, and from other nationalities.
Yes.
So of course this
and journalists as well.
And journalists as well. So of course this make all the people sending trucks, they're a little bit skeptic about their safety inside the Gaza Strip. If we are talking about the other way around, and they all the time say for the people there in Gaza to displace and move towards from the north to the south, and they are being bombarded on their way. We are seeing another Nakba, unfortunately. So yes, we are having difficulty receiving even the injured because we don't have, for example, their medical manifesto or a medical list for all the patients there and their conditions and the priorities. So it's done all the time on a manual basis. So it's all the time hard to select and put priorities and send medical files and who's actually needed for urgent supply and urgent intervention, who can actually stay, because this is the most important during wars, is to do the medical triage, because we are facing a genocide. You need to prioritize infant, children, women. So even the act of prioritization, it's taking time because there is no computers, of course. There is no even recording system. So that's the logistical problems that actually hindering the movement from Gaza Strip to Egypt and from Egypt to Gaza Strip.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely there's also a huge and high risk of the spread of diseases and epidemics within the Gaza Strip as a result for the very poor sanitation, healthcare system, I mean, what have you. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
As deaths and injuries in Gaza continue to rise due to intensified hostilities, intense overcrowding and disrupted health, water and sanitation systems, posing an added danger, the rapid spread of infectious diseases. Some worrying trends are already emerging. Lack of fuel has led to the shutting down of desalination plants, significantly increasing the risk of bacterial infections like diarrhea spreading as people consume contaminated water. Lack of fuel has also disrupted all solid waste collection, creating an environment conducive to the rapid and widespread proliferation of insects, rodents that can carry and transit diseases. The situation is particularly concerning for almost 1.5 million displaced people across Gaza, especially those living in severely overcrowded shelters with poor access to hygiene facilities, safe water, increasing risks of infectious diseases transmission. The UNRWA and WHO and Ministry of Health are scaling up flexible disease surveillance systems in many of these shelters and health facilities. The current disease trends are very concerning. Since mid-October, over 33,551 cases of diarrhea have already been reported. Over half of these are amongst children under age 5. Disrupted routine vaccination activities as well as lack of medicines for treating communicable diseases further increase risk of accelerated disease spread. This is further compounded by incomplete coverage of the disease surveillance system, including early disease detection and response capacities. Limited internet connectivity and phone system functioning further constrains the ability to detect potential outbreaks early and respond effectively. In health facilities, damaged water and sanitation systems, dwindling cleaning supplies have also made it impossible to maintain basic infection prevention and control measures. Insufficient personnel, protective equipment also means healthcare workers themselves can acquire and transmit infections whilst providing care to their patients. The World Health Organization has called for urgent, accelerated access for humanitarian aid, including fuel, water, food, medical supplies as well, into and throughout the Gaza Strip.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Anan. Now, before we start talking about a biological warfare, practically, all the trucks and the equipment that are being sent into the Gaza Strip, and we've seen yesterday the Turkish ship through the Arish maritime port really sending a lot of emergency care units, intensive care units, a lot of more sophisticated equipment as well. Assuming they actually go through the Rafah, the Egyptian side of the crossing, and actually going through the other side, a lot of hospitals are being bombarded. A lot of medical personnel and UN personnel and journalists, all sorts of people are unfortunately getting killed. Now, who would be there to actually be able to operate effectively all this sort of equipment? Because even if there are Doctors Without Borders, are they in enough numbers to cater and really be giving enough attention to all the thousands of patients?
Unfortunately not, because you are talking about a population, as you mentioned, 2.3 million, and we're talking about 70% of the hospitals are actually gone right now. They are bombarded. So we are talking about maybe 30% of the healthcare system there is actually functioning. So it's not sufficient at all. And by the way, it was never sufficient, even before the 7th of October. However, you all the time put priorities. We do have, as you mentioned, Doctors Without Borders, we do have the UNRWA, we do have the medical staff there. And currently what they need to do, and they are unfortunately doing, is making priority triage. So they are selecting patients. So as we mentioned, they are prioritizing infants, children, and women, then old citizens, senior citizens, and then finally men. So unfortunately, that you do have patients that you know that he's in need for help, in need for medical attention and intervention, and you actually tell him that, unfortunately, I will need to treat another patient. This is a very tough decision, and it is a decision that physicians are taking every day and every hour, because you do have very limited numbers, and so far, the Zionist troops are not permitting a safe passage for the healthcare professionals and medical supplies to be able to help. And we are actually all the time saying that as per the international laws that they are not respecting at all, at least we need to ensure safety and security of the medical aid and safety and security of the medical personnel who are actually providing aid, exactly like journalists, but they are actually respecting no law so far.
Well, everybody is really looking at the strong physical injuries that the citizens are really suffering from, but also you've seen many of the videos, children and younger ones and even some adults really being shook by the whole situation, traumatized, literally shaking. So mental health and really trying to send, I mean, are we also sending people who would be able to deal or talk to the people or try and ease this sort of trauma and absorb some of these traumatic psychological shocks? Or is it not the first priority because it's not physical?
It's not the first priority, but at least when you receive a patient coming from war, you need to treat their trauma and then treat their post-trauma. So post-trauma, you need a psychologist, you need a psychiatrist to be able to communicate to them for the post-trauma conditions and syndromes. And this actually, we do have this discipline and domain in Egypt. But are we sending, or Doctors Without Borders are actually sending people specialized in that? I don't think so. And currently the focus is to treat. Treat and prevent any disease from emerging, which is the first priority currently, is to make sure that we are preventing and mitigating any condition where we are actually facing a virus, an outbreak of a bacteria, an outbreak of salmonella, of even of flu. We are approaching winter.
Yes.
And we are praying every day that they will be saved from a flu attack or a flu wave this year, or a COVID wave, for example.
Yes. Well, also talking about the break of diseases, about 33,551 cases of diarrhea, for instance, half of them, over half of the children and infants under the age of 5.
Yes.
Now, you've mentioned the issues with sanitation problems. I mean, the whole atmosphere is a very fertile atmosphere for pandemics or epidemics, really, and diseases to spread around. So is there some sort of anything that can be done regarding trying to limit or mitigate the effects of a spread of such disease, even if they're primitive sort of methods to be followed?
Yeah, so we are talking first of all about fresh water and sanitation, and we all the time fear, God forbid, cholera, because in most cases in conflict zones and in war zones, cholera emerges because of lack of fresh water and a lot of problem with sanitation. And if so, what we really need is vaccinations and treatment. This is the first line of defense against any endemic that can happen or emerge. So first of all, you need to enter vaccines, you need to enter hydration medications, and for all the diarrhea treatment, dysentery as well. And then secondly, you need to apply some public health policies in wars and conflict zones, because the public health, the general one, will not apply. We're not going to be able to tell them just wash your hand, keep distance. It's not in conflict zones or wars. What we really need to tell them is to take care of the babies, take care of the pregnant women, to be placed in a good condition as much as possible, making sure that there is good supply of fresh water and a good supply of good food, and making sure that the food is not actually contaminated or not coming from any place near of any bombarding because of the carbon, because of the phosphorus, and so on. This is a basic public health rules. Unfortunately, it's not sufficient in terms of individual or habitual adaptation to the public health rules. Of course, they need masks, so we prevent as much possible the respiratory viruses from spreading. We need to make sure that the vaccination are there for chickenpox, vaccination are there for polio. These are the basic needs. Unfortunately, all of them needs the entry of medical supply.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is a catastrophic, really, situation and conflict taking place there in giant proportions, and Egypt is doing the utmost it can. I mean, is sending aid and relief trucks to the people in Gaza, and also receiving injured Palestinians and Gazans into hospitals here in Egypt. We're going to be following all the developments here at Anan International, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. Before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Dr. Islam Anan, the lecturer at Health Policy and Health Economics at Ain Shams University. Dr. Anan, always a pleasure having you with us.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Anan International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.